Hey everybody, Edo here, and I am excited this morning because I have Laura Hoffmann on the line. Say hello, Laura.
Hi, everybody.
And Laura is the COO of Game On Tabletop, which is a growing crowdfunding service like Kickstarter that's emerging on the scene. And obviously, I've done a lot of Kickstarters, and I'm super curious, and I'm excited to talk about all this stuff. But before sort of doing a little bit of an overview of the platform and talking about some of the specifics, I always think it's great to sort of understand, Laura, where you're from and how you sort of got into quickly how you got into games, but also how you ended up running this gigantic crowdfunding service.
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks a lot for having me here.
Oh,
It's
sure.
a pleasure. I've been following your channel for a while, so it's always fun to actually be a part of it.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, today I'm indeed, like you said, CEO of Game On. I've loved games since I was a kid. I did not necessarily have a huge game collection available. I played a ton of Monopoly when I was a kid, and I played all night long. And kind of like, yeah, whenever I could, I would play. And then my gateway games were Settlers of Catan and Carcassonne when I was like 11, 12-ish, and it like really got me into gaming. And then I did as a teenager, I discovered role-playing games, and for me it was like, okay, my absolute dream job would be to work in some form in that industry as a graphics designer or do some operations or stuff like that. And it seemed for me super unavailable because I was aware that it's still like a niche hobby and not necessarily very easy to find a place. And then I got very lucky because a local RPG publisher was looking for someone that could help them out at a convention, which was the Essen Spiel back in 2014. And I am German, and so they were looking for someone who could also speak German. And so I ended up with these guys, and then the next week they made me come back to the office and offered me basically a job. So for me, that was really a dream came true, and
Well,
I've done a lot of different things with that company since graphic design, production, art direction, and then I moved into the crowdfunding section and took over the Game on Tabletop project when that became a platform by
ve-
itself.
very cool. And yet another example, because this comes up all the time, of somebody who took the step of engaging with a company via a convention, via helping out at their booth, and that sort of person to person connection that step by step has led to growth within the company and engagement. I think, again, a very common question is sort of how to get into games, how to be a designer, how to participate. And, that help at the booth is to some degree sort of like be in QA in a game company, not because of the jobs are the same, but because it's allowing you to meet and interact and engage with the company. And then they see your skills, they see what you're good at, the positive things, and then suddenly they're like, oh, hey, we have something for you to do. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great spot to start out with, and I think it is a small industry, and the first thing that people are looking for are the hardworking people. And I think conventions are a good way to test someone because it's long hours, standing there, always smiling, talking to people, always being motivated. And I think if you can make it through a 4-day convention like Essential, it's a good sign that you're ready to do what it takes to have a place. Yeah, so I'd always like, encourage people. Yeah, if you don't know where to start, conventions are definitely a good part to
Yeah,
to
I,
check it
I,
out.
I completely agree. And also, very quickly, you start being somebody who's very familiar with the company's games, right? Like that's also a very valuable thing. But
Yeah.
your game on tabletop, right? So it started as a crowdfunding platform in France, right?
Yes.
And so how old is it? When did you start in France?
So it started in France with the RPG publisher I worked for in 2013. So actually before I even
Oh,
got to the
sure.
company, they wanted to do their own crowdfunding, and Kickstarter was not available in France back
Right.
then, and so they kind of like crafted their own solution. And so very quickly, other French publishers started using it as well, and then German publishers started using it like in 2015, stuff like that, and it kind of like always grew. And then back then I ran a crowdfunding campaign for that RPG publisher on Kickstarter because it was an English language project. Our platform was available only in French and German back then. And so that was really the experience where we recognized the differences between what we've built and what is out there through Kickstarter, and the additional time it took us and the hassle it was, and how many people asked us also well about, okay, hey, you seem to have another solution. Maybe is this something you could open up? And so that's when we said, hey, okay, we want to make an invitation to other creators out there. If you want to have a tool that has been thought out for the industry, that is done by passionate people just as you are, well, we want to make that a possibility. And so we translated everything. We made it into a standalone platform. We call it Game On Tabletop, and that launched in 2017 at UK Games Expo. We released that, and so yeah, it's been growing ever since then.
And so, I mean, that's from a platform perspective really interesting to me because, you know, as much as I'm sure there have been lots of people using it in Germany and France, and you've been working very hard, and this isn't meant in any way as a slight, but from my perspective, I maybe heard about this like 6 months ago, 3 months ago. Like this, as far as I was concerned, this is brand new, right? And but one of the things that like would make me hesitate the most about using a new platform for a crowdfunding campaign is it being new, right? So the idea that it's not something that like has only had 7 campaigns on it, but probably 1,000 or whatever the number is pretty significant. And it's interesting because as a creator, there's always, you know, and it's like, not that I haven't heard of it. It may have crossed my desk, but basically there are a lot of these regional crowdfunding tools that aren't Kickstarter that are used like country by country or specific regions, because oftentimes as a publisher, I get reached out to from a company that wants to localize or, you know, start the game, and they're like, well, we want to take your game, but we're going to kickstart it in our country. And then, you know, and I haven't been a huge fan of that deal, but like, you know, so clearly these things have existed. You know, at this point, because I'm sure you're familiar with it more familiar with it than I am, in terms of the international ones, like in the States, it's like, well, there's Kickstarter and then there's Indiegogo. You know, that's really the only conversation there is as far as I'm concerned. Maybe somebody else will correct me. But when you're not just U.S. centric and you're looking internationally, are there other sort of sizable multi-country crowdfunding platforms, or is it really just a couple?
So in general, I mean, obviously being in Europe, we have generally lots of specific elements per country, not
Sure.
only limited
Sure,
to
yeah.
crowdfunding. And so indeed, like you said, a lot of countries do have their own crowdfunding platforms. Many of them are, however, not necessarily targeted to games. So there's, for instance, another crowdfunding platform in Germany that's targeted only to games, but it's way smaller than what we are. There are a couple of initiatives of different crowdfunding services in other countries. I know of more projects that are also coming along. Right now, we are the biggest platform targeted only to tabletop games. So obviously, we don't make the numbers Kickstarter does or anything. So that's for sure. But as we are just the targeted crowdfunding platform doing only that, we place very, very well there. Obviously, not everybody knows of us, and even though we have quite some recognition, especially like in markets like France and Germany and stuff, obviously in the US market, we are not yet as well known, and it's not something that we are hiding at all or anything. We have, however, worked with quite a few bigger publishers already, either on late pledges or some of their campaigns, like with Paizo. We've worked with Monolith and Mythic Games and stuff like that. And obviously, there is a lot of growth that we would like to see, or that we would be
Sure, I can imagine.
definitely focusing on.
You're gonna start saying, "What are we doing with these RPG books?" I mean, keep going. Sorry.
No, Matt. So yeah, we've been growing it slowly. We're not necessarily the type of company going all in hiring on tons and tons of marketing budgets to get something out. We want this to be a proved concept. So what we first did is we worked with people that we've known in the industry for a long time. So they were the first people to come on, and then we branched out. We've been to most of the big conventions. I mean, the big conventions in the US right now are not necessarily very available. But so over the last years, we've been very present there as well. And so we are quite happy with the growth we have because it's already very significant. But the good thing is that the industry is also growing and that the potential is still very much.
Sure. I mean, if you can build that on-ramp and confidence and group of publishers using it and reusing it, right? I mean, the Kickstarter market and the board game market are very large markets, and so I mean, comparatively, they're large enough that I expect that there's quite a lot of growth in front of you all. But okay, so there's sort of two pieces to it, right? I want to walk through, and we're going to talk about, like, I'm curious about some of the tools and ways it differentiates from Kickstarter. But like, for me as a creator, it's as much a conversation in terms of the tools as it is a conversation about the audience, right? And user comfort, right? I think when everyone was talking about, I don't, again, whatever, 3-6 months ago, more of the public announcement or more in the States or however it became more of an active conversation, everyone lists those bullets like, oh, integrated pledge manager, integrated stretch goals, all these cool things. Is this a game changer? And, from my perspective, part of it's like, well, those are cool, and I actually am curious about them. But at the same time, it's like if the value and advantage to Kickstarter these days in general is the audience. It's the user base, right? Because those are the potential backers. If you're not like just using your one newsletter, so that's a big part of the conversation is how you're growing in that way, because there's that critical mass where it makes sense. But let's talk about the platform for a second. I've been looking at it. I haven't personally made a campaign on it. But if you've seen a Kickstarter on the campaign side, it's somewhat different, but it's got the same type of information, the similar layout, which is fine. But in terms of the differentiating factors, right? In terms of the things that, this being game focused, why don't we walk through just some of the things where you're like, hey, if you know Kickstarter, it's like Kickstarter, but here are these key advantages, and then we'll go deeper from there.
Yeah, so I'll address first a bit of the functionality part, because talking to someone who knows crowdfunding and Kickstarter in particular very well, the very main differentiator is the fact that every bit and piece of a pledge manager is built into the actual campaign tool, which basically means that once your campaign is done, and if you charge for shipping right away, you could send out whenever you want to. Like if your production is already ready, you could ship out the next day, and you don't have that additional phase of I have to re-invite everybody. They won't get their emails. They will log in like a month later. They might never log in and then tell me I haven't sent out the package, which for me is coming a bit from a user experience element is an aberration concerning a sales tunnel. For me, it's like, okay, you want to convert your people as quickly and as securely as possible, and every external step that you add is just adding more confusion and complexity for people that are not necessarily as used using.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah. And for me, so by still keeping all the advantages of being able to do late pledge campaigns and continue to give people the possibility to modify their order, to add stuff. Obviously, those are things that are important for us. But for me, it's about, okay, somebody comes and purchases something, and I know what they've bought, how much they bought, where they wanted to be shipped, and if they had any specific additional choices. For me, this is information that is crucial to me because I need to manage my production costs. I need to prepare for shipments and all the other stuff. So these are elements that are built in right from the start.
So let's dig into that a little bit because, I mean, you may or may not know, but I'm mostly a Kickstarter traditionalist in the sense that actually, Herbaceous Pocket will be the first title that I use a pledge manager in addition to Kickstarter. So, I mean, certainly through Kickstarter, a lot of that information is available. But let me see if I can. So, let's go through it a little closer. So, when a person backs, like, is the platform all or nothing, or is it like Indiegogo? What's the funding type?
Globally, it's all or nothing. We worked way back in a time with people that wanted a flexible funding goal, and so they communicated about what was happening. But generally, like 99% of the time, it's all or nothing funding type.
Okay, so I'm a pledger and I'm pledging. Yeah. When I pledge, am I pledging for combined Kickstarter and funding, fulfillment, shipping cost, or is that taken care of sort of afterward in this integrated pledge manager?
The most common form, it is set up on Game On. So we have like lots of different types of campaigns and people that do it differently, because all project managers do it differently, obviously. But the most common type is the campaign run by someone who wants all the information right at the start. So the person will back, will select the different items. They will select their reward level, so their pledge. They can select any add-ons that they want to have, and then they will have a total of shipping weight, and they will be able to to pay for that shipping cost also right from that point on. They will fill out their shipping information. Obviously, they still get the option to modify it later, approve it or anything, but they can fill out everything, and if nothing changes, they should then just receive their pledge as soon as it's ready to be shipped out. Obviously, there are some project managers for some specific reasons that don't want to or don't need to charge for shipping costs at the time the campaign is running. Then those are charged later on when it's closer to fulfillment. Those are things that are also possible. But then again, it just will reopen that sense that you will have to re-invite people in. So they come back, they read out information, pay for shipping.
That's the weird question, right? So, like essentially, and I'm not actually a big fan of it personally, but the growing trend, and I think it's like, from my perspective, it's like really anti-consumer, but like for the growing trend is a deliberate gap of, hey, here's the Kickstarter, you're going to fund it, you're not paying shipping. We're going to take that money, and then 6-9 a year later, or whatever it is, 3 months later, 4 months, whatever, you do the invites, you do the pledge manager, and then at that point, you're like, oh, by the way, you owe us $25 in shipping. I've actually heard backers argue with me, like, oh, I like being able to break up the amount of money that I'm spending, especially international ones. But at the same time, like my reaction is I feel like as a person, when I pledge, I'm pledging for the success and this thing and getting this thing, and then to get a second bill to me is like I really have a bad reaction. But on the platform as you describe it, I guess my question is, so it sounds like, is it that there's as a creator, I just click integrated pledge manager or not? Like, what is the process for me to make that distinction?
The campaign is always built on the same structure.
Okay.
There are a couple of features that, like, if you use only the pledge management function, because you could also run your campaign on another platform and use Game On just for a pledge manager. That's also possible. And obviously, there are a couple of other functionalities that you won't use then.
Sure.
But the general structure of the pledge management system, the way you can handle your products and picking lists and the shipping, those are always available, no matter what type of campaign you're basically running, in which way you're running it. And so if you want to charge shipping later, you will leave the shipping blank, kind of, and indicate to your backers that you're charging.
I see, okay.
Wrong. They won't be charged for it right now at that point. But obviously we don't have a magic way for then automatically charge them later, so it won't solve the problem of them having to come back. I'm in on your side, and the fact that I, as a communer, absolutely hate the pledge management invites, having to go back, having to then find out how much shipping is actually. I think, and I understand that shipping costs evolve over time, that they don't have very good estimates and stuff like that. But I also think it's kind of possible to still work on that as a company, especially the ones that don't have necessarily a very long delivery time, the ones that will deliver in 6 months. Well, you kind of should have an idea of what your shipping costs are going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to totally ground out in this conversation, but like,
Yeah.
to me, of all the things, shipping costs is actually pretty well documented and understood, and the parameters are super clear.
But
The
it
places
takes time.
it takes time, but
Yeah.
like, it takes time to design and develop and
Yeah.
manufacture. There's all sorts of risks, and
But it's not fun, right? There are not that many people.
sure,
There are a lot of people that
sure.
love to do art, and there are
No,
way
no,
fewer
no one
people
said
that
doing
love
this
to
was fun. I mean, like, I don't know why people think it's fun. All right, so but so basically, what I'm understanding is like, if you use the platform, it's basically got an integrated pledge manager system. It all works together, and the assumption is it's all or nothing with the uh, shipping fees included. But of course, you can say, "Hey, we're not charging it now."
Yeah.
Then you'll get a pledge request, which might even be through your own tool, to then come back and do a checkout system, etc. But the other thing you also mentioned, which I think is another feature of the site that I know Kickstarter is trying it right now, is that sort of add-on piece, right? When in terms of the add-on, is that when in the flow? Because I admit I haven't even backed anything on the platform. Where in the flow does the add-on happen? Is it when they're picking their pledge level, or at the very end, like a pledge manager would?
So yeah, indeed, if you haven't backed before something on Game On yet, what you will see is indeed you see a campaign structure, which is very similar to a lot of other platforms out there. So you have the campaign presentation, and then you just have the pledge levels. And what we always recommend is, as you can have add-ons through Game On, make it simple. Make it 2, 3, maybe 4 different pledge levels. Make that first selection very easy, because then your customer goes into the sales tunnel. And as soon as they're in there, generally the second step will be the add-ons. So the second step will be a page of all the additional purchases that they can have. They can add them in then at that point, mix and match. And obviously, so depending on the way it's set up, sometimes it's possible to have a first checkout and then maybe have a checkout later through the late pledge, like you said, a bit in the sense of it's sometimes good to be able to pay a first amount at some point and maybe a couple of months later adding more stuff in there and not having all the money go out from your bank account at one point. So those are things that are really flexible. You can modify your orders there, obviously. And then depending on the complexity of the project, obviously there are a lot of projects that will have choices like language choices or color choices, or even like pledge levels that have slots, like it's the customer who can decide what goes in there, like which dice set they want to pick out of a selection of 10. And so those are things that can be added into that tunnel as well. But the basic features are, first, you have the reward level selection. Second, you have the add-ons. Then you check out your shipping address and you proceed to payment. And in between those, you could potentially have some variant selection if that project needs it.
Right. And so, I mean, the way you're describing it is very much what I would think of as a shopping cart experience within a e-commerce platform. Is it then to say, from a creative perspective, that some of those variations and things you described are editable and manageable by the creator in terms of the number of screens, the order, and the content inside of it?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, the project manager sets all of them up.
Well,
and
I mean, I don't think it's obvious, because like on Kickstarter, that's not what it would be. On Kickstarter, you would have a couple things to add, but you would never control sort of that flow and funnel. That would not be so like if you're using a pledge manager, typically you can. But on Kickstarter, I wouldn't assume they would let you do that. I would assume they'd be very strict about it. Is it? And so you have tools to set that order up on the back end?
So yeah, I mean, it always depends. There are limitations.
Sure.
I'll be very honest. If there's one experience that I've made working in this over the past 3 years, is that project managers have very specific needs, and all of those are very different, and so we don't do everything.
Sure.
But generally, it's the project manager that we will work with to find out which is the best solution for them, and the variants they will select how they want them to be labeled, how they want them to be connected to the product, how they want them to show up if they whether or not they want to have those different slots. Obviously, a lot of things are also formatted, like you cannot change the checkout process. You cannot, I mean, you still have some choices even based on the payment solution and stuff like that. So in kind of a way, you do have an influence even on those steps. But yeah, there are some specific limitations in there. The idea is obviously to give as much information as we can to the project manager as soon as the backer has checked out. So to know, I have sold X amount of that product, I have sold X amount of that variant of that product, so I know that I have to produce X amount of that product, and also my margin is X. Or I'm not performing well enough, maybe I need to adjust. I'm performing better than I thought, I could go back to my printer and request a newer quote with a higher quantity. Be able to have that control and that vision about your product and your project, I think that's really key.
Got it. Okay, I have some other questions, but one more question, and like if it's a sensitive question, you don't have to answer, of course. So one of the things that I'm dealing with right now, and as is many creators in the United States, is upcoming legal changes in the United Kingdom and in the EU regarding VAT and that notification by the platforms. Do you have do you have an established policy or answer to whether or not you are representing the companies as an e-commerce platform such that you would be reporting VAT, or is your expectation that it's on the publishers for them to do it?
Everything is on the publisher on that behalf. So we are really, contrary to some of the other platforms, we are really a service platform. We are more like the eBay style. So it's really the project manager who is promising something to the backers, and it's also the publisher who will receive the money directly. It does not transfer with us, so we don't take any commission on your payments, and we also do not hold the funds at any time. But that also comes with the fact that it's the publisher's job to do all their VAT declarations depending on the different locations and stuff like that. We don't, that's the one big thing that obviously we don't offer, is we are not an entire accounting system. We provide all the data that you need to implement it in accounting systems. But we cannot be an accurate accounting solution internationally, obviously, given the whole different specifications and stuff. What we provide basically is trying to help you have access to the most of the data. There are some features in there that allow some specific add-ons to cover some additional fees based on location. So some of that is kind of possible to anticipate. But yeah, it's still, the accounting part is still going to be on the side of the project manager.
Cool. Not that I didn't expect that answer, but I think but the fact that you answered it is actually, I can't get that answer from Kickstarter right now. I just have to assume that's what they're going to say. Okay, so one of the things you just mentioned quickly was around, you said data, which I'm sure is pretty transparent, but from an analytics perspective, from a BI perspective, how do creators have an analytics dashboard for the campaign page and the checkout process, or do you guys sum it up? Like, how much information are you allowing the creators to have access to in terms of the platform experience?
So first of all, that's something still in evolution, and I hope it's something that we will see continue to evolve over time, because I think there's a ton of more information that we can give access to, and that I'd love to see access to. It's more about a question of time. Right now, it's still quite basic. We give the basic information about numbers of backers per day, the curve, stuff like that. Concerning analytics, we can implement some stuff. We can implement your Facebook pixel. We can help you target specific things if you want to. We don't have an as developed dashboard as some other platforms. It has not necessarily been our main focus. I think most of our main focus is always the functionality of the management, and not necessarily the conversion track rates, stuff like that. So those are things, like I said, I'd love to see come on a bit more, but just take a bit more of that time. So what we give you is, some information about where people come from, obviously, the average amount that they're paying, how much backers you're selecting, and then we give you the access to the actual hard data of sales and what they're purchasing.
I mean, what for better or for worse, it's not as if Kickstarter does a good job here. So this isn't one way.
I mean, I'm not in that special comparison, but I know that especially like tracking referrals and stuff like that, it's something super tricky, and it's something that leaves a lot of space for on how your view is of it. Like, I mean,
sure.
More difficult data to accurately tell this person actually came from that source or elsewhere. So it's a topic that we want to find the right way to address it on our platform.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, I even, the source and referral information is, as you said, very difficult. But like, even just understanding your drop-off level, right? How many people get to the pledge manager page, get to the pledge page, and then drop out? How many people scroll where? What's the there's all sorts of just standard page breakdown type of stuff that would be super useful to have.
So parts of that are a part of it, because actually you can see dropped pledges, and you can also contact those persons if they had to figure out any payment issues or anything else. And like I said, there are some things that we can work with you to give you some information on some of the elements. Obviously, it's difficult also specifically on data protection issues to give too much insights.
But even I'm talking about aggregated data. Like dropped pledges is valuable to know and understand, but like more like dropped out of they haven't pledged. If they've pledged and then they decide not to pay you, that's like a whole nother category. But it's that middle category. But anyway, okay. So we talked about the pledge manager flow, and it seems pretty integrated, which is neat. And we talked about you mentioned the add-ons in that part of the process. One of the things I recall was this sort of integrated stretch goals. So essentially, is that during Kickstarter creation, there's essentially like a stretch goals page, or how does that work?
Yeah, so basically, instead of having them be just images that you would replace on the campaign homepage, those are actually little blocks that you will set up and create on the Game on admin page. You can set them up all in advance and then just show the ones you want to show. And you will tie them to a target amount. And then the system will calculate, obviously, if that target amount is reached. And if that target amount has been reached, then it will basically switch the icon, the unlocked icon, over to, well, this stretch goal has been unlocked. It will also give you a countdown of, hey, it's still X amount until the next stretch goal is going to be released. It can release a new update to show for the backers that are online. It can even be connected with an add-on. So you could say, okay, if I hit 30,000, I'll be able to make an expansion of my game, and it'll be available for $10. And then so you connect that add-on, you prepare it in advance, and you connect it to the stretch goal. And then as soon as the target amount is hit, well, it becomes available. And so that can happen at 3 a.m. in the morning, and you are fast asleep, and it's still happening, and people can purchase, they can interact with what's happening on that sense. For us, stretch goals are such a integrated part of especially tabletop crowdfunding. I mean, some campaigns don't use them, but I'd say 95% of campaigns do use them very successfully, and it's what make the big success of many of those campaigns as well. And so our idea is, okay, this is something that can be technically automated, so let's automate it. And that's what we strive for, to find those things that are repeatedly used and to make it into an actual technical solution.
And then so it seems to be the case, but perhaps not, is can I adjust or control the layout? Not the layout, like where those are appearing on the page, or is it that once they're unlocked, they go to the top automatic? I'm just looking at some campaigns while you're talking.
No, actually, you've got when you set up your campaign page, you have an editor where you can put in all your tags and images and place everything what you want to. And you could potentially put in your stretch goal images manually, but you shouldn't, because you also have a system with a little code that you can just place wherever you want to on that page, and it will pull out the information that you've set up. And the same is true, for instance, for your pledge levels or your add-ons that you've set up. Instead of having to copy them and put them again on the site, you can just take the code and it will pull out the information that you've set up before on the page automatically. So that also means that if you change something somewhere, you have to change it only once, and you don't have to go back to the campaign page and also switch out images and stuff like that.
Got it. So I've been looking at some campaigns while you're talking. Currently, I'm looking at the there's a number that aren't in U.S. dollars and things like that. So I found one that appears to be. So I'm looking at Tales of Terror 5e miniatures and book, which seems to be a very successful campaign. They're at about $150,000, which is no joke.
Yeah, so that's a late pledge management campaign. They were funded on Kickstarter and use us as a pledge management and late pledge tool.
Well, so that's what I wanted to understand. That's why I was confused. So it's live. It's in the when I'm searching. So like, okay, so just for people listening. So like there's an explore button at the top of the page, and when you bring it up, it brings up a very clean, very reminiscent of Kickstarter, but very clean page that has live, sort by live, funding, total, campaign, late pledge, etc. So what help me out here, because this was confusing me. It's in the live category, but it has all these late pledges.
Yeah. It is live. It is open. You can back the project. You can support the project, but it is in its late pledge phase. So the funding goal has already been hit. In this case, it had been hit on a different platform. And under the funding amount, you should see the breakdown between what it initially raised and then what has been raised in addition to that through Game On. And so this is one of the examples, but we've done that recently as well, for instance, with the Conan the Conqueror a pledge manager from Monolith, where they initially raised the funds on Kickstarter as well, and then they came over and checked out all the rest through Game On here.
Right, and so, okay, so as a service, let me go back to you. So I'm like, as a service, you're, in addition, I mean, there's the pledge manager service, but you also have this sort of late pledge campaign controller system that you can use, that if you're all in on your platform, it's integrated, but if you're just coming in from another one, it's an opportunity to leverage that. Has that been how's the uptick on that been? Has that been a success?
It has been. So we've done, like I said, with a couple of quite big campaigns. We've done the Joan of Arc with Mythic Games initially, where they raised 2.1 million on Kickstarter, and then the 2.3 million on Game On and stuff like that. So it's been really successful. Now, we've never hidden ourselves in the sense of that Game On was initially a crowdfunding platform, and that's our very main core. In the sense of like stuff like auto unlocking stretch goals, where they're not as useful through a late pledge campaign because not many people continue to unlock stretch goals. So it's the most powerful if you use all of our tools together, because the most straining part of a pledge management system and a late pledge campaign is the fact that you have to re-invite people, and they have to re-log in and recount and find their order and fill it out and pay for shipping, and then they'll see that shipping is more expensive than what they thought for. And so we cannot magically make that disappear. And so our main focus has always been the campaigns that run right from the start, that are way more streamlined. And so it's not necessarily the thing that we most push. However, like you said as well at the beginning, sometimes people are here like, okay, we would like to try out the platform.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like such a, in particular, because it doesn't really exist on Kickstarter, right? So it seems like a very easy, not easy because it's a bunch of work, but like I can just look at that page and I'm like, oh, this is a lot of work. But like if it's it's easier to it's just less of a commitment in a way, right? It's rather than saying my next big campaign I'm going to do over here instead of over here, it's more like, well, I have this thing, let's try it out, and then I made more money over here than over there, or whatever. That becomes an interesting conversation. So we talked about the pledge manager. We talked about stretch goals. Again, when I look at the page, everything seems pretty straightforward. Are there any other big differentiators that we haven't covered that you think are worth mentioning? I have some other questions, but I don't think they're about differentiation.
Okay. So about differentiation, I think one of the parts that I definitely say as well, especially for creators. So there are a couple. One is, for instance, for newer creators, is the fact that we are also available. So obviously we won't run the campaign on behalf of the creator, but we will at least have a chat at the beginning, talk about the project, and if there are any questions, also either point you to somebody else or some information there, or provide a service and help ourselves. So I think that's a big differentiator, because I know crowdfunding can be very, very overwhelming.
Sure.
And having somewhere to actually at least start the conversation, I think is important. And the other big part is differentiator for us is the fact that we can actually work together with publishers, and especially, like we touched about that a bit earlier, about the publishers that are repeat and that are coming back, and that they want to try new things, they want to build something new. Well, we have that opportunity to work with those, and that's been going very successfully as well. So for us, it's very important to build on that feedback from the actual people, and for them as well, it opens up more opportunities, because they're not stuck with solutions that have to work for all different types of industries, but just something that works for the game industry. Like, for instance, we just unleashed digital file fulfillment, meaning you can fulfill PDFs or STL files.
Oh, that's
or,
cool. That's very cool,
JPEGs.
actually, for a lot of people.
Because, in the tabletop industry, it's super important, right, to have that feature and have that library connected. And so I think that's one of our strengths, and that's one of our big differentiators there as well.
No, that one's super interesting, actually. The I've done a couple PDFs and a while ago. I don't do it as often as other folks do, but certainly being able, not having to think of, hey everyone, here's the link to the Google Drive and blah 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 blah. Having it feel more like the reward you were supposed to get, I think, is fantastic.
Yeah, and also for the community, consumers. So I mean, they might remember on which site they've purchased. And so their first reaction will be to go on the site where they purchased to see if they can find the link. But however, if you send it through an email or another service, they won't find the information there. And so the idea is we've seen that before we have that feature, lots of people writing us, okay, the project manager told us that they sent out the PDF, but I cannot find it anywhere. And we're like, yeah, it's because it's not on our website. And so I think that just makes so much sense for me, at least.
No, it's a really nice integration. I mean, I think in some ways, there could be a lot of fun ways to do that, right? Like, since it's such a pain, like no one, it'd be cool to make some custom coloring page or some custom this or that. That's not really expensive, but fun. I used to do this stuff. Like we did papercraft for Liftoff and all these things,
Awesome.
and then, trying to get it to backers and doing all, it just becomes such a headache.
Yeah.
But I think if it's like, oh no, like, hey, as part of this backing, you're going to get access to this set of files.
And for you, basically, it's uploading one image and one PDF file, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then it's available.
That's a cool. I mean, I don't. No one's ever mentioned that one to me. I guess it's new. You said.
It's really new. Yeah, it unleashed like beginning of November.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so we've tested it with the first couple of publishers.
I like that one.
We're very happy about the feedback, so we're really happy to promote that more now.
Well, yeah. I mean, it even would bring up the idea of sort of some more really digital only type pledges. So we typically these are about 45 minutes. We've hit 45 minutes. I easily could keep asking you questions. I do appreciate, by the way, like, again, the ability to have the conversation and ask the specifics and talk. It definitely is. For better or for worse, right? Like, I feel like I'm talking to somebody who's working on this thing, as opposed to a representative for the company who is telling me which is great. And so the marketplace. So you have the projects, and then you have this marketplace. Is the marketplace exclusively products that have been on the platform that are now in pre-order, or just excess inventory through your pledge manager, or is it totally distinct in what's on this? Like, can you just give a quick summary of how the marketplace works?
Definitely. So the marketplace has been something that we wanted to do for quite a while, because we got a lot of people like telling us, okay, I want to release this game or this project, and then telling us, yeah, but it's not really a crowdfunding project because I don't want to do any stretch goals. I have the funds basically to produce it, but I just need a way to sell it. And then they still did crowdfunding campaigns, but that doesn't really work so well. So it's a lot of effort to put into a crowdfunding campaign for a product that's not meant to be a crowdfunding product, okay? And then there's the other part that a lot of those creators, they had their products crowdfunded. It's difficult to have a space in distribution, and they didn't necessarily have their own online store. So it's something we wanted to do for a long time. And then Corona hit, and it was even a bigger struggle for a couple of publishers we've already been working with. And so we said, hey, we have the structure to handle sales. We have the structure to handle products, orders, and stuff like that. So let's just open it in some form to give access to the people to run that. It is not at all limited to people that have run a crowdfunding project or project on our platform. Anybody could use the marketplace.
Oh, so I can come in and just say, hey, I want to sell some things. Now, but you're not warehousing. You're just taking an order, passing it through.
Yeah. It's basically everybody has their own little store, and they can basically benefit from the fact that we do have quite some traffic, and also we have a very curated audience in the sense of, the people that really stick around, they're gamers, they're crowdfunders, they're here for exclusive stuff, for the hard to find games, for the not yet out games. And so that's kind of like the idea is, hey, you have still some limited editions of your game lying around. Why not put them on that marketplace, get a few more eyes on it if you don't have your own online store there as well. So that's kind of like the idea behind that. And again, also that's still really, really fresh and building out bit by bit, and we are improving on that as well. But it's really about giving that, kind of like closing down the sales channel, and in the sense of, you've run your crowdfunding campaign, you need to sell your overstock, you're not in distribution, you need a solution, you can use our platform as well, and it kind of like really integrates in there. And then again, it's not at all limited to people that have run crowdfunding. You can also feel free to inquire if your product is a good fit.
Cool. Well, yeah, and so I think, I mean, again, I could probably ask you questions for another hour. We will save everyone that conversation. But the site, as I'm walking through it, for anyone listening, is pretty straightforward. Again, it is reminiscent of Kickstarter, but you can quickly sort of see some of the places it looks and feels differently. Certainly from a backer perspective, when you're looking to explore and see campaigns and stuff, it looks very similar, and I mean that in a good way. Actually, I do also like the way that you give the sort of like a paid takeover on a website where you can blast out the surrounding space in your logo or brand. That seems like it's a standard feature for these campaigns. And make your campaign yours. I mean, you'll still be on Game On. It's still gonna be the Game On header. But it's about, I think the number one reason people back projects still is because they like the creator, they heard of them, they like the game, they recognize the brand, the company, something like that. I mean, otherwise all campaigns would be successful out there. And so, we want to give that space and the voice to the creators to make their product shine. Yeah. And I'll also give you credit. I can tell immediately that your site performance is quite good in a comparison.
I'll pass that on.
From a comparison perspective, I'm looking at the trailing, updates in chat and stuff, and swapping between them. Like obviously you're not reloading pages like Kickstarter does, right? So you're not changing URLs. You're just using an embedded. Anyway, I can see what's going on in this way better. So okay, well. In the interest of this video actually saving, I do have to say thank you so much for being on. It was very interesting to start learning about the platform. So people who are watching, I do have a number of creators who watch. I'll post in some of those channels. But, if somebody is interested in learning more about what you're doing or how to get on, or they want to try out a campaign or try the late pledge or whatever, is there a best person to contact, or just go to the site and start building?
So obviously you could reach out to me directly, which would be laura@gameontabletop.com. Other than that, you can go to the website. There is a form you can fill out if you want to request a creator account. What will happen then is that we will reach out to you and offer you a first call so we can talk about stuff and you can get more information. You can get a demo of the site if you want to, obviously, as well. So yeah, we also have a Discord community where you can find us. So those would be the best ways to reach out to us. But then again, also all social media, you will get a reply from someone from our team. Yeah, and the most direct will be gameontabletop.com and heading to the contact form or the creator form.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, so thank you so much for being on.
Well, thank you so much for your time, for your very interesting questions. Always
Sure.
a pleasure to have a really good exchange about different things that I don't necessarily am always asked. So awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Hey everybody, Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist, League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks. Bye.